I start? So welcome back to another exclusive episode on the Passionate Pioneer podcast with today's guest, Nyree and 𝐷𝐻𝐻𝐿. Hi, Nyree.
Hello.
Well, I'm thrilled to have you on the show. So before we dive into your story, let me just introduce you. So Nyree is the powerhouse co-founder of 𝐷𝐻𝐻𝐿, a purpose-driven communications agency shaking things up. For 2 decades, Nyree's been a force in crafting impactful campaigns that drive real change, from boosting organic sales for Riverford to challenging perceptions of aging. But her journey hasn't been without its hurdles, of course. Nyree's personal experiences facing career setbacks due to pregnancy and navigating the challenges of miscarriage have fundamentally shaped how she runs 𝐷𝐻𝐻𝐿. So let's dive in as she tells us her first-hand experience about how to navigate the cost of living, the salary transparency, and the surprising truth about what aspects of this work bring her the most joy and fulfillment. So let's get started. So the co-founder of 𝐷𝐻𝐻𝐿. So what sparked this joy in founding an agency with this mission, and how does it intertwine with being a B Corp?
Do you know, weirdly, the thing that's led to this point in my life where there is lots of freedom and lots of joy, was not a very joyous thing in the it was I think early in my life, just this strong desire to like follow the rules, follow all the rules, the written ones and the unwritten rules. You learn the rules by the ones that you can literally, they're in your contract and you can see them, but all the rules you sort of absorb from watching people and seeing which behaviors get rewarded. And I think I've been a real rule follower. And then I think I sort of, as you get older and wiser,
yeah.
yeah, and the more you progress in sort of traditional worlds of work and you get closer to the source of the rules and where they're being made. And I just found the more awake I became to the fact that there were all these rules, and particularly all the sort of unwritten rules, and also life evolves and you get older and the rules stop making so much sense, or at least they did for me. Do you know what I mean? And I got to a place where there was a sort of gradual awakening, and I sort of realized how many rules I'd just been breathing them in. I was sort of swimming in them and not realizing that there were any rules. And I sort of slowly became, I don't know, aware of the rules, and they made less and less sense. And then I had a child, and then being a parent, suddenly, however desperately I tried, and I did try really, really hard to keep following the rules. I just couldn't anymore. I just couldn't. The rules were not, they were impossible for me to follow anymore. And it took me such a long time, but eventually I realized maybe it's not me, maybe it's the rules that are wrong. And then once I'd sort of had that, which the moments where it's such an obvious revelation, but they're the ones that sort of hit you in the face and they feel really revolutionary, even though it shouldn't be revolutionary at all. It's sort of hit in the face with this realization. And that's when I started getting cross with the rules and thinking there has got to be a different way and a better way. And I can either sit and be miserable or I can do something about it. And so that's where I kind of got to, and what made me eventually launch 𝐷𝐻𝐻𝐿 and rewrite the rules.
It's really interesting, and I was smiling because it's a very normal story in the corporate world, isn't it? The unwritten rules, almost like society rules. The society has a lot of unwritten things you can and can't do. And we're British, so we understand those unwritten rules very well, more than most. You can't do that. That will show everybody up. You can't do this, that. But as I worked in the corporate world, and so I totally understand the unwritten rules of, what works for one does not work for another. Um, a lot of favoritism, nepotism, and quite an unfair system, really, where I've just felt used and abused at the end of my corporate career. I'm not sure about you, but that's why I left
Yeah.
Nyree, and that's obviously, I left to create my business and to create a better way of life for myself, as you did. And we're in service to others in different ways, because you created a corporation, a mini corporation, and I created a coaching business and a podcast. So we've done it in different ways, but there is a better way, isn't it? That's interesting. The unwritten rules.
You have to work quite hard, I think, to get rid of those rules. You
Hmm.
have to work quite hard to just even spot them, realize that there is a rule going on there, and unpick quite a lot of that learning. I mean, what, 20 years of learning, probably
Yeah,
longer if you
yeah,
count school, a long time of
yeah,
learning all that stuff, breathing it in.
yeah.
It does take a while to unpick, to de-rule.
It's like I call them. It's almost like a. Some people describe it as an onion. We're onions, and we're just taking off the layers. But I also feel that it's like a weight on your shoulder. It's like heavy coats,
Yes, that's
and you
more what it is.
and you just keep taking. And every time you take off
Yes.
a heavy coat, you're like, oh, that feels lighter.
Yeah.
That
You
feels better.
breathe easier. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's like as you would do that, sort of doing the gesture of taking the coat off, that's exactly what it is.
Right. It feels, and it's very difficult to change that within the system.
Yeah.
You have to step away from the system and create something better for yourself and something new. It's very difficult to change it from the inside, isn't it?
It's really difficult because you're battling against I really like your metaphor of the coat, but everybody's got those coats on, and
Hmm.
it's very, very difficult to and a lot of people who are in charge, they like the coat, like it's serving them. They're not going to take the coat off. So it's really, really difficult. And all you can do is start to point out some of the times when you realize people have got the coats on and you need them to remove them. That's all you can do is start to point it out so other people realize. But yeah, it's really difficult. If you want to do something a little bit radical, I think it's really difficult to do it from within.
It's interesting as well, the word you used, awake, because once it's out of the box, once you're awake, you can't put it back in the box,
No.
right? Once you become aware of certain behaviors and those unwritten rules, and you start looking around, you're like, what's really going on here? And you can't, once you start unpicking that, as you called it, there's no going back, really. You've got to just keep moving forward. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, there are people that just wear those coats, and they've just they're comfort blankets.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
there
there's
are.
there's no growth in comfort, right? You've got to start taking off the coats.
There's no growth in comfort, and I think the coat, just stretching the coat metaphor, those coats are made for certain types of people that are
Hmm.
look a certain way and have had
Yeah,
certain types of lives. And
yeah,
when you're a bit different from that, not even that different, but when you're a parent, for example, suddenly they stop fitting. So they're more like a straitjacket. And I think even if you wanted to try and follow the rules, those rules just don't. They make it impossible for you to be happy and be well and work, which I think is what most people want. You want to work, you want to work hard, but not at the expense of your happiness and well-being, because what's the point?
yeah. It's interesting how many women I do speak to, that we're not taught. we just have to fit in. Just go into this box. Well, I've always been a square peg in a round hole, and most of the women I've spoken to, 99.9% of them, I've always felt like a square peg in a round hole, and once you start, you know, embracing that instead of saying, oh, there's something wrong with me. No, no, there is something very right with you.
Yes,
Do not fit into the box. Be different. You came here to be different. And I also use an analogy of a fingerprint. Every fingerprint is different. Every fingerprint is unique. Embrace your uniqueness.
I love that. Yeah, exactly. And I think so often work doesn't allow us to do that, and it makes us think the structures make us think it's us. And yeah, I wish I had sort of come to the realization sooner. But anyway, better late than never.
Well, okay, so so that's a great segue into the next question, which is, what point did you realize that this was your passion and your mission and you had to change to make a change?
I think I'd realized there was a sort of slow creep, but some of the earlier stuff that I'd been doing in my career around behavior change and looking at sustainability, and this was right at the start of my career, but there was just so many things that I've been told by workplaces that you couldn't do. So for example, you can't just work for nice clients. Like, you can't just work for clients that are doing good in the world. You've got to work for the bad clients, and they might be doing things that weren't ethical in the world, or they might just be horrible people. You have to work for them because they fund your work for the nice people.
Hmm.
So many things like that that you're sort of told over and over again, and you believe them until you have an awakening.
Yeah.
You kind of breathe it in and you believe it. So it was a case of slowly challenging those things, and it was becoming a parent that finally the penny completely dropped. But I think it had been a bit of a slow creep up until that point.
Mm. I think mine was the same, Nyree. I think it was a over a 1 to 2 year period. It just started getting worse. And once
Yeah,
you're awake to it, you're like, I'm not sure I can handle this or stay in this situation anymore.
totally. Was there a particular trigger for you, or was it literally a slow awakening?
It was a slow awakening, although spiritually, I'd always been a little different. So I'd got that aspect of me as well. And when I started on the spiritual path of having um, visions and channeling, which I do now, um, and lots of other things like having past life regression therapy, which I went for in 2014. Once I started doing all of that, I really did not fit into the corporate world anymore. It just wasn't working for me. It just didn't fit.
Mm,
Um, and I didn't want it to. But I soldiered on for a bit longer because it takes time
yeah,
to make that change.
yeah,
There are women in the world and there are people in the world that, make a sudden change and they're able to do it successfully. But for me, I think it's a big jolt to your body and a big jolt to your nervous system when you suddenly leave a corporate career of 20 years in one day and then you try and figure it out. I think you've got to do it slowly.
I agree. And I think there's a bit of you at first you do try and change it from within, don't you? Like, you try and you sort of hit against the brick walls and walls, and then you sort of move on from there. So yeah, same for me. It was definitely a sort of process.
And then I stepped back. I started stepping back. I don't know about you, Nori, but I started stepping back more and more. I would still do my work, but I wouldn't be so helpful with other
Yeah,
departments that relied on me. I thought, no, you do your own work. I'm not, I'm sorry, I'm too busy. I can't
yeah,
help you.
yeah. It's the quiet quitting that
The
it's been given
quiet
a name
quitting,
now. Yeah,
the
yeah. That's
quiet
exactly
quitting.
it. Yeah,
And that does, and it is it's a good analogy, isn't it? The quiet quitting, because that's
yeah.
exactly what we do. Um, So Jack and Grace, let's talk about this. So you started Jack and Grace and you co-founded it. Tell us about the the beginnings of that adventure?
Well, as I said, I was sort of emerging from removing the heavy straight jacket slash coat. I love that. I'm going to keep using that. And I happened to have a really well-timed chat with a woman who I'd worked with in our very first job, and we'd stayed in touch. We'd gone our sort of separate ways, stayed in touch, and she was really miserable. She was in the depths of this is a very sort of British example, which I know you have a very international listener base, so not everyone will understand, but
Yes,
she was
but they love that. They love the, you know,
okay.
they love the Brits. They love us
Okay.
overseas, right? So go for
That's
it.
true. So she was working in local authority land doing communications, and she'd been in sort of government and local government for a long time, and just the politics of local government is something else. I mean, you think it's bad nationally, but it's another level. And she was
You
kind of,
should try that in Italy.
is it bad?
It's
It's,
terrible.
oh, yeah, yeah, same. So she was kind of navigating that, and had enough, and your job becomes about pacifying various egos rather than doing the actual thing you're kind of you're meant to be doing. So rather than the sort of local people you should be serving. So she was in a similar place, both kind of unhappy and both frustrated. Like there has to be a better way of doing. Is this it now for the next until we retire, or is there another way? And we did. It was almost like dating. So we had pieces of paper and we wrote down our sort of red lines. Like if we were going to go into business together, what are the red lines that we'd have? What are our kind of core values? And we swapped pieces of paper, and what we'd written wasn't the same stuff, but it was all stuff that I agreed with or she agreed with, so we were happy to kind of it was a kind of meeting of minds, because you don't know, like it's that thing, you don't really know someone till you live with them,
Till you
and you
live with them or
don't
you work with them or
exactly.
actually you travel with them as well.
Yeah, it's those moments. So this was our sort of shortcut of, hang on, we loved working together, we've been friends, but hang on, do we actually align when it comes to vision and values and goals? And we did. And that was it. We just kind of, I mean, all we needed, the beauty of a job like comms is you really need your brain and your laptop and you're away. So we started in a very sort of small way, and we were really firm. So the things with our red lines that we agreed on, we wanted to experiment and we wanted to throw out the window as far as it is possible to throw all of those things we've been told. You have to do it this way. No, you can't do that. So we wanted to only work with clients doing good in the world. We didn't want to have to work with the bad clients in order to fund the good. We were like, let's just see, like, can this stack up? Can we make a business out of this? And we also wanted to be really welcoming to people for who work is brilliant and rewarding, but it's just work. You want a life as well. Maybe there's some neurodiversity going on there. Maybe you work in a slightly different way. Maybe you've got caring responsibilities. So we wanted to push flexible working and make it as bendy as possible, so that we could again chuck out some of those sort of, you have to have an office, you have to start work at 8:30 a.m., you have to then work until 5. Like,
It's
how
just
many of
not
the
the
rules?
same anymore, is it? And
No,
you know, and I'm sorry to say, but thank goodness for COVID. I know that it was a horrible time and there were lots of mistakes made, but you know, we really needed a wake-up
we
call.
did. Yeah,
And you know, because there is a way of working, there is a better way of working. Um, uh, anyway, yes, definitely there is,
100%.
you know,
Yes. And we launched, so when we were doing all this, we were getting really excited about how how radical it was. And we launched just before, we were in like the February, I think we were just before COVID came. So suddenly the world tilted just as we were like launching, the world tilted and all of this stuff was sort of sped up.
yeah.
But you're seeing it now with kind of return to the office mandates
Oh,
and
yes. It's
people.
ridiculous, isn't it? People don't want to go. They're kicking and screaming going back to the office. If you can do your job from your computer, why do you need to go to an office? Why are you paying for office space? It's ridiculous, right?
It's ridiculous. And there's loads of, it is possible to find flexibility. And working from home is one of those, but flexible hours, job share, like flexible working can be so creatively done,
Yeah,
and people just aren't willing. They're so desperately hanging on to these old rules. They're
right.
just out of date.
Yeah.
They need to move on.
Well, they just need to move on. Just
Just
move on,
move on.
people. Come on. But we are moving. I mean, as a spiritual life coach, I also follow astrology and everything else. And we are, the old systems are breaking. And the female guests I speak to on my podcast and in my business, we see this happening all the time. The education system's broken, the health system's broken, government systems are broken, the banking system's broken, everything is broken. The corporate system is broken. And we don't necessarily need to just forget about them completely, but there is a better way of doing them. And the working system, where you have to go in at 9 and you finish at 5. Um, and there's no flexibility at all. And I think, even if it was hybrid working, where you maybe one day in the office a week, because you have to go in to meet the others to get that teamwork
Yeah,
or to share ideas, and it's better to do it in person. Sometimes it's nicer than online. But really, there does need to be a lot more flexibility now, doesn't there?
it does. It always makes me chuckle when I see, and so many kind of the sort of corporate organizations that we've been talking about, they talk about having the very best talent. We've got the very best talent. And then you look at the website and you get a feel for them, and you realize that they want people in central London for 8:30 every weekday. And it always makes me chuckle that there's some mystical Venn diagram that shows the very best talent in the whole of the UK just happens to overlap with those people who can get into central London for 8:30 every weekday. I
Right.
mean, who knew that the very best talent is just that tiny pool of people, that it doesn't add up. And I think
Yeah.
we need to call out this kind
It
of
doesn't add
rubbish.
up and it's not authentic. And I think these days people see through that and they want authenticity. They want real. They want the know, like, and trust.
Yes.
And I think that's probably, why your company is succeeding, because your priority is people, and the planet, and it's ethical and it's flexible and it's the new way.
Yeah.
Nyree, you're one of the I would say many people at this point, but not as many as I would like, but one of the many that are taking us into this new stage, this new era of humanity,
It
if you
feels
like.
like there is a turning point, but I also occasionally look outside the bubble. You'll go to networking events and you join groups, and it brings together, I can only speak for my sector, but it brings together a whole range of people who are running comms businesses. And it makes me realize that there is a movement, but it's still not the mainstream. And there's a lot of people who are sort of clinging on to the dinosaurs are alive and well, I would say. So we've just got to, in our sort of corners of the world, we have to do what we know to be right.
Yeah, and I would say that that's why you chose to come here, because we are the way showers and the change bringers.
Exactly.
Because we never had that. We were put in a box and we had to fight our way out.
Yes.
And I think that, definitely women in my generation, a bit younger, maybe 30s, 40s, and 50s, I would say, um, we're making the changes. We're saying no, enough is enough. There is a better way to do things.
Yeah.
So you've helped your clients achieve results, including, this is interesting, volunteer volunteerism, policy changes, sales, and donations. So, what's the process of turning these big ideas into communication programs? How do you do that?
It varies depending on kind of what your aim is. And this is where, so the bit I get really excited about
I see
is
that and I love that, because there's so much joy and passion in what you're doing. And that's what this podcast is all about. And
all
that's what
about.
life should be about.
Totally. It is really exciting when you get to the sort of creative bit. Like that's the really fun bit. But luckily, my co-founder, who I'm always giving a big shout out for this, she is always guiding us to start with the strategy. Like, and she's absolutely right. You can't jump to the fun bit. You have to do the sort of serious thinking
Well, it's
bit
like building a
first.
house. You've got to have the foundations first.
Exactly. You are very good at metaphors. It's
I'm a
like a
coach.
special skill.
I'm a coach, mentor, and teacher, and speaker, and book writer. So
So you have
trust
to
me,
do. Yeah.
I've had a lot of experience in this. Yes.
It is exactly that. You've got to have the foundation in place. So it sounds really obvious, but so many people come to us and they haven't got a clear sense of why they want to do this. Like, why do you want to invest in comms? Why now? What are you really going to, what does success look like? What do you need to change? And then from there, we have to do loads of insight gathering, understanding the audience, figuring out like what are the major issues, what do we need to kind of address here. And that's always really interesting, speaking to people who are affected by issues, who are at the heart of it, and then building something. And then once you've got those things in place, you're free to focus on the kind of the creative, like what's the execution here that we're going to use. But because you've already got the foundations in place, you've got your walls, you've got your roof on. So the ideas are very, very focused and end up being very impactful because you've done all that sort of groundwork. So the creative ideas fall out of that process, but they're always sort of grounded. But yeah, I do love the sort of creative bit is where that's the really, really fun bit. Not everyone in my organization would agree because some people love the foundations and the
Right. Well,
walls
it's
and
like a blank canvas, isn't it? Once you've got the structure, like you said, you've got the floor and the roof and the walls. It's like now, what can I do? What can I create in this house? What do
actually,
I want? Where do I want
yeah,
this? Right?
yeah,
And then you can start putting color and things into and your ideas into the space. But you've got to have that. You've got to have that
yes,
basic strategy. And it is the boring thing about running a business.
yes,
Um,
yeah, you've got to have that.
Yeah. And I also just wanted to go back to those core values because your core values with your partner, your business partner, that's interesting that you sat down and you looked at the core values, and I'm sure that's something you do with your clients as well. And it's really interesting for me because it's something I do in my coaching is I ask my clients to look at their answer some questions and find their core values because most women don't know
I can believe that.
what their core
Yeah,
values are.
yeah, yeah, and you have to. I think it's it gives you a real sense of confidence and clarity because you could do anything. Whenever the answer to a question is you could do this, you could do that. There shouldn't be 50,000 options because you're guided by your values, the impact that you're trying to make in the world. Actually, you should have 5 to 10 options. And it's the same with comms, like it's figuring out there's nothing more that brings more inertia than having too many options. You
Oh
need to
yeah,
sort of narrow things down, and figuring out your values is such a good way of sort of doing that. It's your North Star, isn't it?
it is absolutely. It's your North Star. Nice words. Yes, absolutely. It's your North Star. And it's overwhelming, isn't it, when you've got too many options? Um, that's probably the problem with the world today. That's why we do have a lot of inertia because we're stuck in the I can do this. No, bring it back, bring it back. And I would say maybe 5 core values.
Yeah, yeah, you need to be focused because it's that age-old thing that you can do anything but you can't do everything. And I think that gets more true the older you get because yeah, you have less time and you have more sort of pressures on you.
Yeah, yeah. You can't. I think that you are correct. That saying you can do anything you want does not mean you can do everything.
No,
Just choose a few things to focus on
yeah,
and focus on those. And I think going with your core values and what's important to you, being your authentic self is really important. That's part of your foundations. It's part of your strategy
yes,
before
yeah.
you can build anything else, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yep. So that's how we do it. And we do have, like you said about the sort of the red lines that we had with my business partner and I, we
Mm,
have those with clients as well. And we always say clients choose us, which they do, but we also choose them, and we're really clear about who we want to work with and the kind of work that we want to do. And it at the beginning it was just this experiment, you've got nothing to lose. But we've stuck to that. We've stuck to our guns on it, even when things have been, really tough and the economy's not been great. And there's a real strength in sticking to your guns and doing something for a kind of purpose.
Well, you learnt that lesson in corporate, didn't you?
I did.
We've
Yeah,
got to
I've
work
got
for
the
these
scars.
horrible people because they're paying us. Now
Yeah,
you have a choice. No,
exactly.
we'd like to work with people that are aligned with us, aligned with our values. Same with me. I
Yeah.
work with people that are aligned with me.
And
Right.
that's where the joy of work and work should be. Work can't, not every second of my day is joyous. But when I look back at a week, there is joy because I'm focused on a kind of purpose. I personally get a lot of energy from having that clear purpose.
And how many women and men have been thrown into careers, at a young age because you've got to have a job, you've got to have security, but I like painting. Forget about that. That's not a job.
Yeah, so many,
It's the
such a waste.
creativity has just
Yeah,
been just kicked out of us,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
and our values. We're people pleasing, which basically means we're living our life for other people's values and other people's beliefs
yeah. Yeah,
and
and
other
other
people's
people's sort of measures of success.
insecurities and
Yes.
fear and their measure of
Yeah,
success, right?
yeah,
So obviously you experience this problems, this obviously these miscarriages and problems in the corporate world. So how do you create supportive policies for employees in the and the companies that you work for to foster this culture of joy and empathy and
yeah.
core values and strategy and everything else? How do you do that?
I at the time I didn't think that it was a benefit, but looking back, I've had so many terrible bosses that it's been very inspiring to flip that on its head and find the joy, because it does give you a clear guide of what not to do.
What not to do. I was going to say they're the perfect example of what not to do. I'm the same.
Yeah.
I've learned so many lessons. I'm like, oh, thank you for showing me what not to do.
Yes. And that's, you have to find the sort of learning and the growth opportunities in everything. And these, yeah, the challenges can be really beneficial, even if it's horrible at the time. I I have a very sort of vivid, I mean, some of the stuff. My when I got pregnant, and it was entirely predictable thing, I was a woman in my 30s. I've sort of been talking about it. My boss burst into tears and said, "How could you do this to me?" Like it was a personal sort of attack. And
Wow.
then I got the silent treatment, and then eventually we sort of came back from that, and I went off on maternity leave, and then coming back, there was just no acknowledgement that actually something had changed in life, and I was still committed and hardworking. But of course, you've got nursery drop-off times, and there are things you have to sort of juggle. And it became very clear very quickly that it wasn't going to work. So I have a great sort of role model of what not to do, a decent catalogue of stuff. And I'm trying really hard to move on from a place, because a few colleagues have said it's probably not super healthy to constantly be saying, okay, what would so and so do? I'll do the opposite. It would be more healthy to be able to, drive forward without having that sort of backpack holding you down. But actually, it has been a useful frame of reference. Like, how can we
Absolutely.
rethink things and just do things a bit differently?
Yeah.
And I think the experiences you have, whether it's challenges with mental health or I had a couple of miscarriages, you learn something each time, and it has every day. It helps shape this business, and And you have to work at workplace culture. You have to work at the people side of business, particularly for a business which is basically people. We don't sell anything other than our expertise and our time. It is a people business. So you have to put effort into that and kind of really shape it. So those experiences have helped me write, like, our pregnancy loss policy is much more better informed because I've been through it. And I think you do
Right.
need people with all different kinds of experiences, don't you, to shape this stuff?
Well, I think you need help, and I think this is where the corporate world falls down very badly, is that there's no support. You're just meant to pick it up, just
Yes,
pull your
you're a
socks up
robot.
and carry on as if you're a robot. There's no actual support. They don't get to know you. In fact, I remember, you know, I don't even think I had a review 2 years running. I didn't even know. I was like, I'm desperately unhappy here and I need to talk to, and there's nobody available to talk about where I was going right. Let's have some constructive criticism. What can where can I go? I'm having some personal problems.
Yeah,
I need to talk about this, Or as parents, you've got a new baby to take care of, and you need somebody that understands and has some empathy and compassion for you. And I think we need those kinds of policies in the workplace because we still have workplaces. That's not going to stop. Okay, we'll go online for a lot of work, but some work you can't go online. There's some types of work, hotels, for example, the hotel industry, where you can't,
yeah,
and some corporate industries, there's no way you can just go everything online. You've got to serve people.
yeah,
And so when you're serving people, you've got to be in a good place. And unfortunately, you can't just bring a suitcase and just leave all your problems at the door. It's like life's not that simple, right? So what type of advice and guidance do you give to companies about these to find more of a balance and help, support?
I send Brené Brown's book to anyone who will, like, stand still long enough. I'll thrust a copy upon them. That was really transformational. I found that sort of leaning into the sort of vulnerability and
Yeah.
being able to be yourself at work. Exactly as you said, we've all got suitcases and they're full
Yeah.
of different things at different times. And if I think quite often what workplaces do is they think that people separate out those different bits of their life, and they think, well, the personal stuff's over here.
Yeah. Well,
I
some
just need
people
to be
can do
working.
that. Some people can compartmentalize, they can do that. But most people can't.
Most people can't, and even if you can, I think you can do it for a certain amount of time, and then you stop. In my experience, you sort of stop being able to. Something changes. But if we rather than seeing all that stuff as a sort of getting in the way of work, that is a perform like if you can support your people properly, they will perform better, they will stay with you longer. We're just so hardwired to see business in quite a linear way, and actually we need to see it more holistically. So that one of the things we do is we have this triple bottom line, which balances out people, planet, and profit. So profit's really important. It's vital for a business, and it allows you to do lots of things. It allows you to shore up your ship and stay steady. It's
Hmm.
important, but
Of
not
course.
at the expense of people and planet. And
Correct.
having a triple bottom line means that your business plan and your kind of KPIs, your key performance indicators, you're not just all about profit. If those three aren't in balance and you have key targets for each, if your profit's up but your people are miserable, that's not success if you've got a triple bottom line, because you're constantly balancing all three things.
Mm.
But so often, like when you're at networking events and business events and people say, how's business? They mean, how's your profit? Like, how's the financial side?
Yeah.
And
Well,
we
that's how
have
people
to,
measure success.
I know. And it's
If
again,
you're
it's
not
so
making
rules.
if you haven't balanced the books, you're not successful.
Exactly.
It's
So
crazy.
we sort of take a very mindful and conscious and purposeful point of balancing out. It's not just about the profit. Nothing wrong with profit, but actually the success metrics that we put against people and planet are just as important. And if all three aren't performing, then we haven't succeeded.
Yeah. There's a couple, you mentioned Brené Brown, who I love, and I also love Mel Robbins. Mel Robbins did a talk on managers in the workplace. Managers have lost the what's the word I'm looking for? The skill. They've lost the skill of talking to they're scared of talking to their employees. They don't want to know how they're doing. It's just do the job. Do the
Yeah,
job, just get on and do the job. And there's a big problem in all industries where managers just don't talk to their people. Um, and then in fact you've got the CEO who doesn't talk to the people. It's top down, really. It's
yeah,
it's not good. Um, the really good example that I know is Richard Branson, who actually says, forget about the client, they're not the most important person. The people are the most important because if you so he goes and he talks to the people. Because the people that run your company, if you take care of them, they'll take care of everything else.
yeah. It's such so true. I think another good example is his name eludes me, but you know the chap that runs Timpson's. So they cut your keys, they mend your shoes.
I don't know the owner. I don't know.
Okay, no, I can't remember, but he again really people first, and he does a lot of work with people who have been in prison and who've got criminal records, but to support that sort of rehabilitation. And it's
Right.
trust, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's I think managers have lost the sort of trust, and you have to trust your people. If you can't if you can't get your head around people working from home or working flexibly, that's a you problem. It's not a them problem. And you
absolutely.
there's a different problem going on than the one that you think, and you need to address the actual problem.
Yeah, because we do have a cost of living crisis across the world. And there's not everybody that can afford to keep going to work and back. And then if you've got children, it's astronomical.
Yeah,
To have somebody to take care of your child, you've got to have that flexibility where you can pick them up from school. Because if they have to stay in 2 hours in daycare or
it's a
somebody,
lot of
it's
money.
a lot of money, isn't it? So how can businesses address that challenge of helping and supporting their employees with the cost of living and balancing everything?
The way that we sort of talk about it is the radical flexibility, and that can look quite different for everyone. You know how you were saying at the beginning, we are all the fingerprint, we are all different, and the needs are different.
Mhm.
Well, the way that it started off as I said, this big experiment, but actually we're 5 years in now, and it's working, it's sort of proving itself. So for each team member, the flex will look slightly different. For some, it might be that it's part-time. So we offer all roles part-time as standard. So you can work full-time, but you need to put in a request just to sort of flip that norm on its head. And if you do want to work part-time, we allow people to say what kind of hours they want to do, how many days. And that's one, whenever we talk to other business owners about that, that's one they really struggle to get their head around. Like, how can how do you make it stack up? How are you making sure you're there for clients? But again, I go back to these rules that we've all breathed in, because really isn't the stupid thing that all jobs have to fit into 37 and a half hours? Like, who picked that number? Why is that the rule? Isn't
Isn't that
that
the
also,
slavery system?
yeah, it there's
It's the
so many
factory workers,
things.
isn't it? Because we were at one point we were conditioned in school to work. Someone rings a bell and you can go for lunch,
That's
and then
it.
you
Yeah.
come back and you work again. And they were basically getting us ready for factory working and the 9 to 5. Whereas that system finished long
Yeah.
time ago. I mean,
It doesn't make sense.
it does just to make it make sense these days,
Yeah.
but it doesn't, right?
It
It really
doesn't.
doesn't. It doesn't make
No,
sense.
it doesn't.
And some for me, my I like to take my mornings. I like to have mornings for myself. I like to go for a walk. I like to meditate. I like to do some things for me. Sometimes I run errands. Doesn't matter. I start work at 12 and I work later.
Yep.
So my
It's what
day
works for
starts
you.
later and I finish later because that suits me.
Yep. Yeah,
we've got to
we
have
are all
that
different.
flexibility. And in fact, even I laugh about it because my weekend is a Wednesday and Thursday.
Interesting. So do you work on a Saturday and
I
Sunday?
do. I don't work
Interesting.
many hours on a Sunday. I only work about 3 hours on a Sunday, but um, I do work on the weekend. Was one, I find that my clients are available on the weekend because
Yeah.
they're working, so they've got more free time to focus on them. And the other thing is, I'm I live in the mountains in Italy. I like a quiet life. I work at home. I don't want to be off when the world and his wife are off
Yeah.
because the
So
supermarkets are
such a
busy, the
clever
roads
idea.
are busy,
Yeah.
everywhere's busy. I like to go and do my things, nice things, when everybody else is working,
Yes, genius. And
right?
it should, and that should be in this day and age, it's totally, totally possible. And yet
Absolutely.
we've still, yeah, there's still so many rules. But I like that you've completely removed all the rules and you've made
I
it, you're making it work.
I'm a rule breaker. I'm a pioneer, right?
You are.
That's the name of the
Yeah,
podcast.
but it's so important.
It is, and I do think, and I understand why some people do it, and that's because they've got children, and the children are in school Monday to Friday, and so they've got to be available on the weekend. So that makes sense. But
But
for
it's
other
what
people,
makes sense. Yeah,
you've got to make it make sense for you.
yeah,
Why would
exactly.
you take the weekend when maybe you'd like to be off on a Tuesday, a Monday, Tuesday?
Yeah, yeah, totally. And for me, the flexible working allows me to be the kind of parent that I want to be and to be around for the things. So that's how I use my flex at the moment. But in the future, when the sort of school hours aren't an issue, I'll be free to use the flex differently. And
Yeah,
it is each to their own. We all work differently,
right.
and you get the best out of people. You know, my co-founder is a night owl. She does her best work. You won't get anything good out of her before 10 a.m.
Me neither, and definitely not before two coffees.
It's just the same. Yeah. And whereas I like an early start, that's when I'm at my best. And then I'll sort of log off early. But it should be each to their own. And I think if you can't manage people like that, the problem is the manager rather than the people.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always top down, right? It's the old systems.
Yes, we're just coming
And
up
then the
against the
new way of
dinosaurs
thinking is creeping its
creeping
way
in.
in, right? It's creeping in slowly. So what's the salary transparency that you've implemented at your company?
Yeah, we're big on salary transparency. So my co-founder Laura and I found out in our very first job when we worked together that we were paid different amounts for the same job because we talked. I
Of
think a lot
course.
of people don't talk about it, but we're young women in a first job, we talked about it, everything, including salaries. And it has a seismic when you find out you're doing a job and you're putting your all into it, of course you are, and you find out that you're being sort of valued and you're paid less. I mean, you immediately start looking for new jobs, don't you? It's a really quick way to get rid of people. So we, as Jack and Grace, we're really keen to be as transparent with salary as possible. And I would like to be more radical than we are, but I think, I mean, you can tell me, but I think British people in particular are quite reticent about talking about money. It's a cultural issue.
Absolutely, we don't talk about money.
No,
Of
we
course
don't, do
not.
we?
It's ingrained in our DNA from,
Yeah.
and it's in our ancestors' DNA.
Yes.
We
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
I think it is. I distinctly remember being told as a child, don't talk about politics, don't talk about money. Um, but we really that was wrong. We really
Yeah,
should
absolutely.
talk about both. So we publish our salary bands, so everybody knows the sort of band, and they're not big, vast bands where you can hide in. They're specific.
Yeah.
And we also publish on every job description, we publish the salary so that people can be assured that we're not hiring in outside talent and then paying them more because we're sort of not paying market rate kind of internally. And we're really pushing other people, other employers to be more transparent
Hmm.
with salaries because there are still so many jobs that still don't have the salary published on them.
It's everywhere. Trust me. It's in the coaching industry as well. Services that are, you get all the information, but you don't, there's no cost. And then
Yeah.
you've got to make the call, and then you find out the cost, and then they trying to hook you into
Yeah.
buying it because you've made the call. And my prices are always up front.
Yes.
They're negotiable. We can do monthly payments. We can do, flexible. But it's not. But I always say this is the price,
Yeah.
because then right? You know immediately what you're getting, and it's authentic. And I think
Yeah.
we need to
It's
have that.
yeah, I mean, money is, you wouldn't go into a shop where there were no prices. You wouldn't just buy something if there were no. Can you imagine going into a supermarket, popping into Tesco's, and all the prices have gone? It's
Yeah.
it would be insane. And yet, for something so important as your job, you are in this weird dance where no one talks about the
Yeah.
money
Yeah.
until the last moment. It does again, it's one of those stupid rules that just doesn't make any
And then
sense.
we're always undervalued because sometimes they ask you in the interview
Yeah,
of the job,
exactly.
what salary are you expecting? Which is very unfair because then you might undersell yourself and they're like, oh, she's cheap. Well, we'll take that.
Of course, they're not going to say, "Oh, we're budgeted for much more," or what you
Yeah.
paid at the moment.
Yeah.
Um, are very competitive. That's my bugbear when people put on job descriptions, very competitive.
Yeah. What
What
does
does
what
it
does
mean?
what does that mean these days? I don't know.
Again, like, can you imagine going into Tesco's and there's no prices, but the where the price should be, it just says very competitive.
Very
What?
competitive.
I mean, it's nuts. Yeah, so we're big on salary transparency.
That's a great analogy, isn't it? Just think of the supermarket, right?
Madness.
If you just
Yeah.
went in and it was just like, well, give us a call a representative and we'll tell you the price.
Yeah. What did you pay last time?
What did you pay last? Oh dear. Gosh, we've definitely got to find a better way, haven't we,
Yeah.
Nyree?
Yeah.
It's crazy. Um, okay, so finally, let's discuss employee benefits. So, why doesn't unlimited leave always work as effectively as intended? Um, Unlimited leave, I'm not sure. You'll have to talk us through that one, unlimited leave, and what alternative approaches can businesses take? Let's wrap it up in just this last final question. To take a truly supportive and engaging work experience for everybody.
So the one of the experiments we tried when we set out on this kind of mission, set up this business, let's experiment. Let's experiment with all the things we've always been told and see what we can chuck out the window. So we had a go at chucking annual leave. You have 30 days leave, paid leave, whatever, a year. Let's get rid of that and let's go with unlimited leave so you can take as much leave as you want, which other companies I've seen, it's not a new idea, it's something
Mhm.
that's kind of out there. But what we found is in practice, people end up taking less leave, and that was never the aim. It was all, leave and holiday and time to rejuvenate and reset is so important for performance. You need it. So the aim was not to reduce the amount of holiday that people are taking. The aim was to sort of put people more in control of it. And if you wanted to take a really long break, to have that kind of ability there. But actually, most people are really diligent. They don't want to let colleagues down. And actually, you need to give them like most people need boundaries when it's something where you feel like you might be letting people down, or actually having a target to give people to aim for. Like, you need to take these many days off because that's important for your well-being, is a much better system. So we're really honest and open with all of our team. There are 11 of us now. So we're still small, but big enough to be in a place where we need to be clear with people that actually some of the stuff we try won't work, and that's okay. It's a work in progress, and we are pioneers in our own little corner, and we are trying things.
I told you that.
So not all will work. But and that open dialogue, and I think that is the one thing to answer your question about what can businesses do, that the most critical thing we've done is the policies and stuff are all really important, and they sort of set out the minimum expectation and the standards that we're aiming for. But it is the culture of everybody that runs through everything. The only way our system works with salary transparency or with flexible working is everybody buying into that and everybody using it and making the most of it and supporting their colleagues when they use it. There's if you haven't got that bit right, then the policies don't mean anything, because you can have a policy, but if everybody's tutting when somebody leaves to go and pick up the kids, that's what they learn as the rule. The
Right.
policy's out the window.
Yeah, you've got to be
It's the
firm, haven't you? You've
culture.
got to just make sure everybody's on the same page and keep
Yeah.
reinforcing it.
Keep reinforcing it and keep modeling it, and if that is where leadership is really important, and we make sure we are really vocal about, right, I'm off to pick up the kids, or no, I can't have a meeting then because I'm actually scheduled to go to the gym then, and that is a valid thing to be doing. We expect people to do that kind of thing.
Okay, that's good.
It's that sort of modeling that's really important.
But can I just add something to that? Because we talked about the unlimited leave and how it didn't work. But there's an experiment on 4-day working weeks. And I know there
Mm,
was a couple of companies in the UK that tried it with absolutely shocking results. The productivity went up and the sales increased. And the profits increased. They were expecting it to be a disaster. Go, oh, well, try it, but it's not going to work because we've always done 5 days. 5 days works. But as far as I can remember, when I worked in corporate, on a Friday it was just a junk day. Nobody did anything productive. Everyone was like, "This is Friday. We can relax. We can take it easy. Not
totally.
busy. I've done all my work. What's the point of going in?" And so they tried this 4-day working week and it really worked. Have you mulled that idea around?
I'm really following the 4-day week stuff, and I've seen some really, yeah, amazing studies. Our position on the 4-day week at the moment is that we don't think it stacks up with the radical flexibility that we have, because what it means is for the 4 days, you need to be pretty focused, like it's boom,
Yeah,
boom, boom.
yeah.
And for us, for our model, we expect people to take time for exercise in the day. We expect people to log off and do stuff with children or older parents, or
Right.
if you've got ADHD, you might work very differently and need regular breaks and walks. And I think for us, the pressure, because we've got this quite different system around the flexibility, I'm not sure it would stack up. I think it would put the pressure on for the 4 days.
Well, you've got a completely different system and you do let people take breaks and you do understand your team. And
Yeah,
I think that that's different, isn't it? When you understand your team, it's you've got a different model. I think for businesses that are having a problem, the old system
yeah.
would work.
I agree. And I think if someone in our team put in a, like, for them, if they wanted to be really focused for 4 days, and then the model that we have allows the flex for that anyway. But I think everybody's just finding their way with it, aren't they? And what works for them. As long as you're not, yeah, as long as you're not one of the dinosaurs, I think you're doing
Well,
something
that's
right.
it. We just need to get out of this rigid, this is the way we're doing it because this is the way it's always been done. Okay.
Yeah.
But that's
When
not
has that
Ethan.
ever
It's never
stood the test of
worked.
time?
It's
Yeah,
never worked.
never.
It's a terrible expression. Just throw that one in the bin. Okay, so I'd like to finish with two questions that I ask all my guests. And that is, if you had a chance to whisper something in your younger self's ear, what would you say?
I don't even know if I'd whisper it. I think I'd yell. I'd just say, "Wake up!" Like, wake up sooner. I wish, yeah, just wish I'd seen this stuff sooner. But I guess you have to go through things, don't you, before you become awake. But yeah, I'd just yell. I'd be like an alarm clock. Wake up.
Yeah, nice. And what's the heart of your story that you hope will resonate with our female listeners and inspire them on their own paths?
I would just ask everyone to take a moment and just reflect on any rules that they might be following that they don't even know are there, that they've just been breathing in. It's the oxygen. What rules are you following that actually you might not want to, and spot them and call them out for what they are.
Hmm, great. Nice answer, Nyree. A million thanks to Nyree for joining me today, and thanks to our audience for hanging out with us. hope you found it inspiring and empowering as always. So find out more about either Jack and Grace, Nyree, or myself. You can find all of our details below. And until next time, this is Beth and Nyree signing off. Bye bye.
Bye.